Welcome to today's class, and here we shall be discussing how to prepare IR for Mains 2022, and this is mainly for regarding the GS portion. But before we start discussing how to prepare, let us discuss the significance that IR plays in this overall mains. And any one of you who has got any of the doubts, you can just send your doubt online, and I think I need someone to help me out here for looking at what are the questions that are. So, okay, before we start discussing, let us look at some of the points like what is the significance IR plays in overall mains. Okay, we know that in GS2 its total value is 50 marks, right? 2 question of 10 marks and 2 question of 15 marks. 30 plus 20, that is 50 marks. But apart from this, even in case of your essays, last year we saw it was very much philosophical, but even in philosophical essays, a dimension of internationally or globally, if you have awareness regarding IR, you can bring in that additional dimension, and that will help you in scoring better marks, perhaps even 7 to 10 marks more. Then in GS3, topics like it is security. Then apart from that, in case of environment, technology, in all these areas, knowledge about IR can play a role. So overall in this mains, it is all about interconnectedness of ideas. Suppose you have got knowledge from GS2 of IR, you can use it there in GS3, and from GS3 if you have got some of the knowledge regarding climate change or security, that you can use in GS2 IR segments in order to get some additional points. Then in case of ethics paper, there is a separate topic called as ethics in international relations, that we shall be discussing in detail in ethics module. Because due to this Ukraine crisis, then there was COVID, a lot many ethical questions have emerged in case of international relations, like India going for wheat export ban, or Indonesia going for banning export of palm oil, though it was for a smaller period. But this has raised some of the questions apart from geopolitical and economic questions, some ethical questions as well. So if you have awareness, if you have knowledge, you can use it in getting better marks in GS4. Then in interview, you know it very well that how much important is international relations. So this portion regarding importance of international relation, this was all, and this was mainly for the first timers who will be writing mains for the first time. So my purpose is that they should not ignore this segment, that okay, this is just for 50 marks, so I shall be reading only these specific segments, all these specific issues, and ultimately they end up losing some of the marks, be it in ethics or in the GS3 paper. Okay, so having discussed the significance, let us come to the next portion, that is challenges being faced by students. You see, this portion I am discussing because there are many students who come with a set of questions. Like during this foundation class, during that Ukraine crisis, I had taken a video, and you can watch that video on YouTube. It is still there, more than a 2-hour video, and that will give you a very detailed idea about this Ukraine crisis, what is happening and why it is happening. And apart from that, a lot of history has also been discussed in that video. So at that time on the YouTube live, one of the students, he asked me a question that how to read it, how should we read this the Ukraine crisis as a whole. And that was not his doubt only, this was doubt of many students, because every day something different was happening. One day this area was being pounded, another day another area was being pounded, one day there was diplomacy, then there was breakdown of talks, continuously sanctions were being imposed, then Russia changes the norms. So for any student this becomes very complex, because you have got a very limited set of time, and in that time if you continue to put focus on international relations, then what about other subjects? So that is why the challenges that are being faced by students I am discussing, so that you get to know which segment of it you lie and how you should approach this international relations. You see, generally we have got two types of students: those who know or read a lot, and those who know or read little. And in this lot section you can find many. You can find them discussing all these issues outside the libraries, on the tea stalls or some other shop, bookshops and all. And they will keep discussing events, this is happening, so this is what India should have done, or this is what US should have done, probably that this is what Russia is going to do. And then this is another section of students. What they do is that they are very much aware that international relation is continuously evolving, it keeps changing. So it's better not to go for a day-to-day commentary, because they are not news reporters, but read about it towards the end. And in my opinion, these people are smarter than these people, because in a limited set of time, when you do not have much time, you need to balance international relation with governance, polity, history, geography, society, science and technology, then it is economy, security, ethics. So in order to give appropriate time to all these sections, you need to reduce your focus from this section, because suppose you are going to read about it every day and every day you are going to write notes, then what is going to happen? Towards the end, after 3 or 4 months, things change drastically. Just imagine 2020. By March of 2020, we were talking about India-China cooperation, and come June, what are we talking? How strong steps we can take against China. We were talking about putting ban on Chinese apps, restricting Chinese imports to India, limiting the opportunity for Chinese companies to poach Indian companies, because at that time the stock values were very low. So just in a matter of 3 months, things changed drastically. Or just in case of USA and China, during Trump the situation was different, today it is different. So if you are going for a continuous everyday commentary about everything, first of all your notes is going to get thicker. You will need to read a lot, but again you won't be having the much needed information, because you are just reading the news, you are reading about events, you are not reading about the ideas. When this section of students, when they are going to write answers, there will be a series of events. This has happened, this has happened, this has happened. But the point is, you have to discuss the idea, you have to discuss the concepts, be it geopolitical impact or economic impact or security implications. So that is something we generally miss. Okay. Then let's come to the another section of population whom I was saying that they are comparatively smarter. Why? Because they will go for reading articles rather than everyday news, or in Indian Express the explained page, because in explained page everything in detail is discussed. But yet again for these students, they also commit certain blunders. Because in case of these students who know or read a little every day, but towards the end they would go for reading the editorials, the articles and notes of different coachings, the current affairs material that are available in the market. The point is that suppose there are articles by someone like Rakesh Sood or Shyam Saran or Shiv Shankar Menon. In their articles you will find a balanced opinion. But suppose there are articles by someone like Happy Mon Jacob or Stanley Johnny or even Ambassador K.C. Singh. Whatever you are going to read, it will be completely one-sided and it will not be a balanced point of view. So when you are going to write the same points in your answers, you are not going to present yourself as a balanced personality, a administrator, a diplomat. And moreover, when you read the articles of all these experts as well, the challenge being faced is that the articles are only over a specific issue. So generally articles are one-dimensional. But you need your answers to be multidimensional. So for that multidimensional answer, you need to read a lot many set of opinions, a lot many point of views. So that is what we will be providing, we will be helping you out with. Now let me just give an example and take a specific name. You can consider this to be a political, but it is not political at all. During Ukraine crisis, or rather to say during this ongoing Ukraine crisis, the government of India has taken a position, right? We shall be discussing that in the class. And on this position, there has been criticism from the West. And Shashi Tharoor, I think it was a tweet where he said that India should be on the right side of history. So indirectly he wanted to say that India should side with Ukraine and India should side with West. Just do not put such point of views in your answers, because international relations are run not on the basis of right side of history or wrong side of history. It is run on the basis of national interest and comprehensive national power. During Iraq war, US was on the wrong side of history, but who is ready to hold US accountable? No one. Tomorrow when India will become a major superpower, even the case of accountability on India will also get reduced. Look at China. It is continuously expanding its navy. The way it is harassing the small ASEAN nations. It has completely militarized South China Sea Islands. But no one is there to hold China accountable. Rather, nations are going for bandwagoning China. Why? Because China is strong, China is an economic superpower. So it is not about right and wrong, it is about national interest. So you would consider that Shashi Tharoor, since he has been to the UN and his opinion is considered important in the diplomatic circles. So I should write his point, I should write his opinion in the answer, and that is a blunder that you would be committing. So what I am trying to say is that whatever you are reading, be it in your newspapers or the current affairs materials or other materials that you are getting from the market, try to assess all those points objectively, because in many of those coaching materials in the market, I have found information that is not worth writing in the mains answer sheet, because that cannot be the point of view of any balanced, objective, aspiring bureaucrat, aspiring administrator. Because what happens is that these coaching centers, for preparing their material, they would pick points from same newspapers, right? And if in that newspaper someone with a vested interest, someone with an agenda is writing something, and same point you are putting in your this study material or current affairs material, it means your information in that material is also not objective. So any analysis of in international relations, and not just international relations, in UPSC as a whole, be it your interview, be it your mains, whatever it is, it has to be balanced, it has to be objective, and it has to be driven by reason rather than sentiments. It cannot be that, oh, I love this expert, so I am going to write this point. Your love does not matter for UPSC. What matters is how well you understand it. You understand economy, you understand society, you understand technology. What about international relations? You are expected to understand that too. Because in case of suppose Pakistan or in case of Nepal changed its map. There were extreme reactions even among UPSC aspirants, that you see China behave in this manner, India is becoming too weak. It's not about weakness, because diplomacy is a very subtle art. How you see how Minister Jaishankar, he is dealing with waste, and same Minister Jaishankar was very much polite, very much humble in dealing with Nepal, but Nepal is a very small nation. Because any step that is being taken in diplomacy, in international relations, there is a linkages of history, there are linkages of geography, there are linkages of culture. Then there are also issues of some extra regional powers. In case of Nepal, it is China. Then what is the internal politics of that particular nation? Because at that time we saw it was KP Oli, and he was continuously trying to rile up India, trying to get that nationalistic sentiment in Nepal, which is in general anti-India. So one has to be very much nuanced, very much subtle, and very much balanced in understanding of international relations. And it is that understanding that is reflected in your answer sheet when you start writing answers. So that is what we shall be providing. So we have seen what are the challenges in general that is being faced by students. But apart from that, are there any comments? Live chat, let us see. Good morning, Vivek. And yes, in case you have got any questions, please let it come to us. I shall be discussing your problems as well, because these are the general challenges that are being faced by all aspirants, and I have divided them in two categories. If your issue is something different, please mention that here so that we can discuss that in detail as well. So having seen this challenges that are being faced, let us look at the syllabus, and after the syllabus there are certain questions, and after those questions we will actually, I have got a PowerPoint, but unfortunately I think there is lack of time, so that I cannot get that PPT over here, so I'll have to write. So in case of syllabus, what are the broad topics? One is neighborhood, right? Next is just let me see it. Bilateral, regional groupings. Then third is the effect of policies and politics of developed and developing world. And the fourth is important international institutions. This is the syllabus, right? So we can see that neighborhood has got a very special prominence, and it is the first topic of the syllabus. Then it is bilateral and regional groupings, and this particular topic, effect of politics and policies of the developed and developing world. This is from the Cold War era. Cold War era, when NAM was very much significant. However, presently this has come back into importance. Why? Because we have got issues with the WTO, and presently also WTO ministerial is going on, and Minister Piyush Goyal, he is there, the Commerce Minister. And then climate change. So this particular topic has to be read mainly from these 2 points of view, about WTO and then it is climate change. Okay? So I don't think there is much needed in the syllabus. The point is that I have got some of the previous year questions that I wanted to discuss. The point is that what should I do? Yes. So now let us look at some of the previous year questions. I wanted that here, but unfortunately I could not put in that PPT. There are some issues. So let us look at some of the questions that were asked in 2021. Okay. The first question was, if the last few decades were of Asia's growth story, the next few are expected to be of Africa's. In the light of this statement, examine India's influence in Africa in recent years. So this is question from 2021. Okay. What does the question say? last few decades, Asia's growth story. And next few expected to be Africa's. And examine India's influence. So this question from 2021 mainly had three parts. First part, second part, third part. You would be most comfortable in this third part, right? Examine India's influence in Africa, right? But the point is how to answer this part. Because had it been a very straight cut question, you would have been very much comfortable. But this is only one part of this question is straightforward and you would be comfortably writing that. But this first part, last few decades were of Asia's growth story. For this, you need to be aware about ASEAN and how ASEAN developed, how South Korea, how China developed. And next few are going expected to be Africa's. So when we will be reading about India, Africa, we shall be discussing about how Africa is growing, because among the top 20 fastest growing economies, more than 10 to 12 are in Africa. Africa's population rate is increasing, average age of its population is increasing. So all this, then there is scramble for Africa, China is going, EU is interested, then USA is also interested. India has also through 3 India-Africa Forum summits, the 4th was about to happen, but unfortunately due to COVID that could not happen. So why next few years are expected to be Africa's growth story? And then in the latter part, we shall discuss what India is doing in Africa, what are the challenges being faced by India in Africa, and what are our suggestions. That is how you have to write this answer. Okay, 3 parts to the question, so 3 parts to the answer. Main focus would be on this last part, but at least out of those 3 pages, 1 page has to be focused on this first and second part, and last 2.5 pages will have to be focused on this part of the question, because it is talking for examination. So examination has to be in detail. Then let us look at the next question, and this is a very interesting question. What does the question say? The USA is facing, again question is from 2021. The USA is facing existential threat in the form of a China that is much more challenging than the erstwhile Soviet Union. US facing existential threat from China that is much more challenging than USSR. Then the next part, critically examine SCO and its importance for India. I think we can see a pattern in the question. In every question, the last part is very much straightforward. And this last part, you can handle it very easily. But the first part, US facing existential threat from China, that is much more challenging than USSR. How to handle this question? In this question, you will have to remember what you read in world history. Because the way UPSC is asking questions, you will have to scramble all your knowledge from different sections of UPSC syllabus that you have studied. So what we will be doing in this question is what were the challenges faced by USA from USSR and how that is different from the threats that is being posed by China. And yes, one very important aspect of answer writing, and that we will be discussing in detail in just a while, is diversification. Okay. So when you are writing the answer to the first part, because second part I know you can handle it very easily, so I am not going into the details. Yes, in the class we shall be discussing it in detail when the module, IR module starts, about SCO, its importance, what are its challenges. Then it has expanded after India and Pakistan. Now Iran is also a member. How SCO is being seen by the West as a ASEAN NATO, as a counter to West and all, that we will be discussing in the class. But here our focus is just on approaching the answer and nothing more. I am not discussing content here, but about writing these answers. So what, as I was talking about diversification, simply diversify it. What were the challenges? What were the challenges geopolitically? Then economically, then it is militarily, then it is technologically. Just discuss this part of the question from this perspective. Geopolitically, how China, USSR was different from China. The world was divided into two blocks. That division is not today. Economically, USSR was a much weaker economy. China is economically very strong. In fact, in PPP terms, it is more than USA, more than 50 countries. China is the biggest trade partner. Then militarily, USSR was comparative to USA, but China is expanding itself rapidly. Through BRI, it is acquiring key strategic assets across the globe. You can mention about port in Djibouti, then about lease in Hambantota. Then technologically, you can here mention about 6G and all, 6G, IoT, quantum computing, and how there is an opinion that China has in fact surpassed USA as well. So when you start discussing in this segregated manner, the examiner will understand that yes, you have a broad knowledge of the issue, and comfortably from 3.5 your marks can jump to 6.5 or even 7. Otherwise, what you would have discussed, that in case of USSR there was Cold War, and during the Cold War, what you would have written? Something like there were conflicts across the globe, then there was Cuban Missile Crisis, then there was detente. You would have gone for this story. Then in case of China, what you would write? that China has become a large military, China has launched BRI, USA manufacturing is coming to China. So that is why China has emerged as a threat. Then you would have come to the SCO part. Imagine in the story that I told you right now about the way you would have written it. Do you think you are giving some concrete set of information to the examiner? Answer is no. But when you start discussing issues in this manner, point wise, diversified, and with specific segments, sectorization of your answer, the examiner will know that you have understanding of the issue, and naturally you will be getting more marks. There are more questions, but I think it would be better that we switch to the part about how to study. So now let us come to the much needed part about how to study IR, the purpose of this lecture. You see, in case of IR, we find that there are around 197 countries across the globe. Then there are these multiple regional organizations, global organizations, multilateral organizations, and every day something is happening in one part of world or the other. So how to cover this vast set of information? Because at the end of the day, there would be 4 questions directly, and in other few questions where you will be using this information in a specific manner. So to tackle this issue, we will be going back to the given syllabus, and accordingly we have categorized the syllabus, the information that is available. So when you study IR, when you start preparing your notes, or when you start reading about completing your topics, start with neighborhood. In neighborhood, no China. Okay. In neighborhood, which are the nations that you will be discussing? You will be discussing all the SAARC nations. There will be Pakistan, Afghanistan, then it is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives. With these nations, what are the areas of cooperation? What are the challenges and important agreements, both signed and negotiated? Let me say this once again. If you are the part of the mains preparation program, target mains program, or you are going for the IR module, you do not need to write all this, because we shall be providing detailed notes, as well as all these issues they will be discussed in the class. But apart from that, you can write it down. Okay, both signed and negotiated. And in case of challenges, what are the specific areas of challenge? Like in case of Pakistan, it is Kashmir. In case of Nepal, it is a boundary issue. And apart from this, there are a set of regional organizations like SAARC, BIMSTEC, and IORA. These three organizations as well you shall be discussing. And the most important factor in the region, what is the relationship of all these nations with respect to China? What are the important projects, Chinese investment? Because in case of Nepal, China has emerged as the biggest investor, and because of China only we are seeing these challenges, be it in Sri Lanka or in Pakistan. And apart from China, you can also bring in specific in case of Sri Lanka, you can bring in Japan. And why Japan is important? Because we know that India does not have sufficient funds. So for plugging that gap for funds, Japan is important, because Japan has got funds but it has got very limited opportunities for investment across the globe. All these nations, they are going to China for funds as well as for playing the China card in order to balance India. So that is why Japan will be important. This is how you will be preparing the neighborhood. Next, from neighborhood, there are major powers. In major powers, you shall be discussing about USA, Russia, then it is China, then it is EU. Apart from EU, you can also bring in Australia, Japan, and you can add Britain, Germany, France. Here also the same funda. What are the areas of cooperation, challenges, steps taken, negotiated. In case of challenges, there are specific set of issues, like in case of China, it is this boundary issue. In case of USA, we know about trade negotiation, then our relationship with Russia. And with respect to major powers, one very important factor is cross linkages. Cross linkages means impact of, if we have got strong relationship with USA, its impact on Russia, its impact on China. Since we have got strong relationship with Russia, how does this impact USA? Then in case of China, how Russia can be important, how USA can be important. Some important policy steps like CAATSA in case of USA, in case of Russia, it's pivot to the East policy. Then Eurasian Economic Union, connectivity initiative like INSTC, or Chennai Vladivostok corridor. So these cross linkages are very important, because whenever you are discussing India, USA, Russia has to be discussed, China has to be discussed. When you are discussing India, EU, Russia has to be discussed, China has to be discussed. Suppose you are discussing India, Russia, bring in the China element, bring in USA. because this will bring diversity to your answer, this will bring in maturity. The examiner can clearly see through that his or her answers are not mugged up, but rather than that, this person understands international relations in its totality. Okay, so that is how you are going to discuss about major powers. And all this, yet again, in the class notes will be provided. Apart from that notes, there will be a lot many questions that will be discussed. What we will be doing in the class, that I shall be telling you in the latter part of this discussion. Okay, having discussed the major powers, then it is organizations. Two types, regional and global or multilateral. Here it will be UN, WHO, WTO. In case of regional organizations, we know ASEAN, EU, then AUKUS, BRICS, SCO. All these organizations are important, and in fact on AUKUS in 2021 only there was a question. And apart from that, all the recent and new initiatives. Then what is issues around climate change, then whatever new steps that are being taken, because very recently Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, right? India became a founding member of it. Then it was RCEP that we did not join. Then what was it? TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. What is its new name here? I think it's APTPP, something like that only. I cannot recall it now exactly. Okay, so all these organizations, what is their mandate, what are the challenges, what are their achievements, how they impact or influence India's interest, and yes, apart from that, World Bank and IMF, they are also supposed to be discussed. I mean studied in about IMF, its quota system, how that is disadvantageous to the developing nations, and this BRICS initiative of new development bank and contingency reserve arrangement, how it is different. All these cross linkages, all these challenges you have to study. So rather than going for whatever is there, study or prepare your notes topic wise. When you do this topic wise, while preparing, you will write them, you will study about them, and then it will become easy for you to revise. And once while you are going through the revisions and you have revised twice or thrice, then it becomes easy for you to create cross linkages. Then after discussing organizations, now come to the regions. In case of regions, East Asia, ASEAN, Central Asia, then it is Gulf or West Asia, or Europe, Africa, Latin America. Here, if India has got specific policies, first, what are those policies and what are the achievements, what are the positives and what are the challenges? Then, important agreements, trade and security relations, important events like we saw India Africa Forum Summit took place, then it was India and Nordic Summit, and what are the challenges and suggestions or steps. These are some specific regions and how you have to go through them, across them. Then there are some additional topics, and those topics would be nuclear issue, climate change, negotiations, WTO, then yes, very important that I missed, Indo-Pacific. This is the most significant topic. Another comes diaspora. These are some of the more topics that you need to prepare. What is India's nuclear policy? What are the challenges? Whether is it, should we revise our policy or should we not revise its policy? Then about NPT, CTBT, climate change negotiation, how India has increased its commitments, what are the challenges, what needs to be done, what are the agreements with other nations. Like with USA we have got it, green energy and climate change partnership, green mobility initiative with European Union. With WTO, it seems almost that it is defunct, though it is not. It is slowly trying to gain its salience, but in an era when nations are putting unilateral sanctions. We saw that US put in unilateral sanctions on Russia. EU also put it. While the rules say that any such economic decision has to be taken through WTO, Indo-Pacific, we know that is the flavor of the season. And diaspora, because in the syllabus you will see that there is a specific term mentioned, Indian diaspora, and we will be covering this topic in detail, because every now and then there comes a question from diaspora. Okay. So this was one part of it, that how you have to prepare your notes for the IR, how you have to study notes for, make your notes for the IR. Go topic wise, try to diversify, try to segregate issues. Okay, because suppose there are certain set of information that is not available in the notes, because you are reading about security. Apart from security, there is no other information that is available in the notes or whatever study material you have got. there you have to search on the net, because Google knows almost everything, though not everything. Then there are some of the keywords that I have written down that you should try to make them a part of your answer. Yet again, as I am saying, those who are part of this target means need not, because you will be getting all this in the form of your notes. And those terms are, let me simply read it out. Strategic autonomy. Let me write some of them. Strategic autonomy. Then multilateralism. Then multipolarity. Then nuclear disarmament. You see, these 4 terms, they are at the core of India's foreign policy. So whatever answers you are framing, they must comply, whatever suggestions you are giving, they must comply with all these factors. In case of nuclear weapons, always mention towards, whatever be the discussion towards the end, if you think that there is a scope, that India is a reluctant nuclear power and India's interests will always be better preserved in a nuclear free world, because that is the bottom line of India's foreign policy. Then India always believes in multilateralism. Then multipolarity. We do not want a bipolar or tripolar world, we want a multipolar world. So that is why India and EU, our interests converge. Why? Because both India and EU, they are more interested in multilateralism and multipolarity. US wants unipolarity, China wants bipolarity, Russia wants multipolarity, EU wants multipolarity, India wants multipolarity. Then strategic autonomy. Whatever decision that we take, we do remain autonomous. We are not a camp follower. We do not follow any specific bloc. Because during this foundation class, there was a discussion with a set of students, and some of them, they were saying that India should ideally go towards West. India should choose West. But I had a discussion and then I explained things to them. Similarly, whenever be it a question about Ukraine crisis or any issue, we have to remain strategically autonomous. Suppose there are questions about Quad, and should it become a military alliance or military grouping? Suppose you do not use the term alliance, then military grouping. Yet again, apart from all other reasons, whatever be geographically that we share boundary with China, we are in close proximity. But at the bottom, this is the foundation of your answer, that if we go for Quad, there are chances that we might get involved in US wars that we do not want to be a part of. So, since India has a stated policy of strategic autonomy and taking decisions in its own interests, it's better that Quad remains a non-military grouping. There are other factors as well, like the opinions of ASEAN nations, because ASEAN nations also, they do not want to be a military grouping, they want it to be a non-military grouping. So there are other factors, but apart from that, from India's point of view, strategic autonomy is very important. That is at the core of our policy. Then some other keywords that you can ensure that they are part of your answers, that are South-South cooperation, freedom of salience of communication. India does not want to be a major power. India does not want to be a superpower. India looks at itself as a leading power. Okay. This term has been used by External Affairs Minister as well as the Prime Minister. So, India is a leading power. Many a times there is a confusion that whether India is a major power or India is a regional power. Because there is a confusion. We do consider ourselves to be the major power, but when we consider ourselves with, when we compare ourselves with USA or China, our military capacity is comparatively lower. So we are generally categorized as middle powers. Who are middle powers? They are Japan, first India, Japan, then Australia, even Germany. But this is a Western point of view, okay? Western point of view. What are we? We are a major power and we are a leading power. Then there are some other terms like rule-based order. Then External Affairs Minister, he had used a very interesting term. India is a southwestern power. This term I'll not discuss here. I'll discuss this in the class. But for others, you can search it on the internet. What is the meaning of a southwestern power? Then third word, leadership, and that is why NAM always remains important for us. Then whenever you are discussing topics, it has to be in national interest. Whatever the issue is at hand, it has to be in the national interest. In international relations, simply morality does not work. We used morality in case of China during 1962 and we got a very crushing defeat. We took bus to Pakistan. In return, we got Kargil. But when we sent some of the Mirages to Pakistan, and then 370 and status of Jammu Kashmir was changed, Pakistan came and they signed a ceasefire agreement. And fortunately, it is holding till date. So it is not about morality, it is about power. It is about national interest. So national interest, comprehensive national power. Then suppose we are talking about economy. In case of Quad, India versus China, India EU, India USA, bring in the terms like diversification of supply chain and supply chain resilience. India is part of SCRI, Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. India, Australia, Japan, Indo-Pacific, and some policy terms like whenever you are discussing about neighborhood, discuss about neighborhood first policy. Discussing about ASEAN, bring in Act East policy. With Central Asia, Connect Central Asia policy. And this gives us ground for discussing some of the weaknesses. Like suppose question is about India and Latin America. There can be a point that there is no dedicated policy with respect to India Latin America relations, just like we have got Act East policy or a neighborhood first policy. Similarly with Africa also we do not have any dedicated policy. So these are another keywords. First you should be aware about what are the contours of all these policies, what is the purpose, and whenever there is a question with respect to neighborhood any of the neighboring nations. Bring in neighborhood first policy. Gujarat Doctrine, graduating to neighborhood first policy. Actist, lookist policy, graduating to actist policy, where the strategic dimension is more important. Connect Central Asia policy. Why? To link with Central Asia. And suppose we are discussing SCO, bring in this Connect Central Asia policy, because in SCO, all this except for Turkmenistan, all these Central Asian nations are there. Suppose we are talking about Connect Central Asia policy, bring in SCO, because SCO provides us a platform for engaging with Central Asian nations. So just look at these cross linkages, relations between one issue and the other, one policy and the other, one region and the other, playing one nation against the other. Like in case of neighborhood, bringing in China, bringing in Japan, while discussing India, USA, bringing in China. In case of Africa, how India and Chinese policies are complementary, but there is competition with respect to European Union or USA. So these cross linkages, all these continuous thinking that okay, I have to bring in something new, because when you discuss all these issues and when an examiner reads all these in your copies, he gets a sense that you understand all this. You have not simply mugged up points and you are vomiting that in your notes, in the copy, in the answer sheet, but you understand it, and that is why you are presenting a diverse, a more matured set of opinion, because you understand all these various policies, various steps and their nuances. Some more information for your benefit, and this one is with respect to major powers. Okay, suppose you are talking about India, Russia, then key term has to be special and privileged strategic partnership. Then time tested partnership. You see here, I am just giving you a glimpse while discussing India, Russia. Things will be in much detail. Okay, these are just glimpses that some important terms. Then with India and Japan, what is the term? Again, this strategic partnership changes in case of Japan. It is special strategic and global partnership. Then you can bring in Quad, ensuring peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, balancing out China, providing a guarantee or providing a sense of guarantee to the smaller ASEAN nations, investment, mutual trust, cultural linkages. That was India, Japan. Then India, USA. For India, USA, the terms used have been very interesting. Before 2000s, the term that was used was not reluctant, but estranged democracies. Then this term was used by the Indian Prime Minister, that India and USA have crossed the hesitations of history. So suppose there is a question about India-US relationship, you can use these terms. Then the term used by Obama, defining partnership of 21st century. These terms about India-US relationship. Then about China. It's not always about fight, okay? At Glasgow, there was cooperation, there was no cooperation, but there was convergence of thought between India and China on coal. So, cooperation, competition, and conflict. Then you can use some terms like Asian century, developing nations, then history of conflicts, frozen borders, these are some of the terms that we can use for India and China. Okay. So after having discussed what are the important terms that we can use with respect to all these major powers, now let us look at the way these answers, you can frame your answer. Till now we have discussed what are the key terms that can be used, how we have to prepare notes, how to study all these topics. But now about writing or framing answers. So let us revise the two things that we have discussed till now. The first one was you have to diversify your answer. And what would be the second one? Create cross linkages. So suppose there is a question about bilateral relation. Let me write it in a different manner. Suppose the question is about bilateral relation. Any nation. It can be India, Nepal, India, USA, India, China, any nation. So break it into points, because anyway in mains we write the answers in point wise only. What would be one angle? It would be geopolitical or political. Then economy. Then security. Then cultural or people to people. Break your answer under all these fragments: geopolitical or political, or you can write it geostrategic. So when you break a relationship into all these factors, and suppose you are knowing those key terms that we used, like suppose a question is on India-Russia relationship. So what is geopolitically? India and Russia enjoy a special and privileged strategic partnership that has stand the test of time. That will be your introduction. Then what is geopolitical or relationship? Then both nations have staked in a multipolar world that is not dominated by either USA or China, but everyone has a say. Then economically we are weak, so we will bring in there that hardly the bilateral relationship roughly is bilateral trade is roughly around $12 billion. However, recently since we have started the energy exports, there are chances that it must have increased. Security wise, we know militarily how we engage our defense relationship, joint manufacturing, shared concern about terrorism, stability in Central Asia and beyond, that can spill over to the borders of both nations, cultural and people to people relations, that is weak. Then what can be another? Important platforms where we cooperate. In case of Russia, what it would be? BRICS, SCO. Then at UNSC also there is cooperation. So now you will say, sir, bilateral के लिए तो आसान है. Suppose question specific आ गया regarding economy, तो क्या करेंगे? या regarding security, तो yet again sit down, apply your mind, and you can diversify that too. Let me change this to, suppose a question is regarding security cooperation. When we talk about security, diversify it into traditional and non-traditional threats. Then security, there would be military dimension, then there would be technological dimension, or you can talk about cyber security. Then you can always bring in human security aspect. And why this human security aspect comes into importance? Because of climate change. Then since India is a major grain producer of the world, you can bring in food security. Human security because of climate change, then there is pandemics. So you see, whatever be the question, you can always diversify, and I have shown you in the beginning that how in that question of 2021 that China poses a more potent threat to USA compared to erstwhile USSR. There also we had seen that just by diversification, economically, security, geopolitically and culturally, how you can frame a better answer, that too in point wise manner. You do not need to read all this long history. But whenever you write this, in order to get better marks, go for substantiation. Okay. You must be reading newspaper and getting about news. What you would have been doing earlier, just writing down the events, ये हुआ फिर ये हुआ ऐसा हुआ वैसा हुआ, वो नहीं करने का, एक ब्रॉड आइडिया देने का कि फूड सिक्योरिटी में देयर इज इमेंस स्कोप फॉर कोऑपरेशन. एग्जाम्पल कैसे दोगे? इंडिया एक्सपोर्टेड व्हीट टू इजिप्ट at a time when wheat exports from Russia and Ukraine had suffered due to Ukraine crisis. तो हमने एक आर्ग्यूमेंट दे दिया और उस आर्ग्यूमेंट को सब्सटेंशिएट कर दिया एक एग्जांपल के साथ. सो दिस मेक्स अ कंप्लीट पॉइंट. इंडिया पाकिस्तान के केस में देयर इज ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट. वी नो एग्जांपल्स that after Lahore bus diplomacy there was Kargil. During composite bilateral dialogue in 2000, as composite bilateral dialogues they were going on smoothly, in 2008 there was Mumbai terror attack. So you give argument, you substantiate it, and that is not only for IR but throughout. Even in case of essays, suppose there are philosophical essays or even for other science and all, if you make an argument, try to substantiate it in 2 lines with an example. Paper 1, 2, 3, 4 in ethics this becomes all the more important, and again we will be discussing all that in ethics module. ठीक है, तो हमने सब्सटेंसिएशन की भी बात कर ली है. अब आगे, एंड this is very 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 important. जैसे कि I have noted down a few points, like I will term this be careful about. The first is use the terms that are used by government of India. Okay, अभी यूक्रेन क्राइसिस में everyone is saying, even हमारे न्यूज़पेपर्स and media, they are talking about Russia invasion of Ukraine, but not in a single document you will find that the government of India has used this. Initially they went with Russian line and they said special military operation, and presently everywhere the term Ukraine crisis is being used. So suppose a question comes, you have to use the term Ukraine crisis. वो नहीं करना है कि रशियन इन्वेजन वगैरह वगैरह. We have to go for the government of India's line. That is point number 1. Then what is point number 2? The point number 2 is avoid policy criticism. You see, in case of agriculture, in case of economy, whatever policy is, the matter is internal and there is always scope for criticism, and we go for that because we have to, every policy has some of issues and we do that. But in case of IR, try to avoid that. Rather, because there is already enough scope for criticism. I mean, not criticism per se, but weakness or challenges. Do not go for criticism, but discuss about challenges or weaknesses. Okay. Like in case of India USA or India EU, what is the weakness? US is unable to understand India's position or India's strategic autonomy. That is a very serious weakness. Then do not go for criticism of FTAs, but we have not been able to negotiate a FTA with India, with USA. That is a challenge. Or you can talk about the delay in conclusion, poor implementation, but avoid policy criticism. That is very important. Then third, as I gave you a list of key terms, you have to bring key terms in your answer, because use of these key terms will segregate your answers from the answers of others. Then what would be the fourth one? If you can remember some of the terms, in the statements of president or PM or external affairs minister, you can use it. Like the external affairs minister, he recently said that Europe considers its problem to be world's problem, but world's problem are not of Europe's concern. You can bring in while discussing about India-EU relations or some of the challenges that are being faced. We can bring it because that statement has been given by an official. Don't go for political statements, political terms, because opposition leaders, they will criticize the government policies because that is their duty. Those criticisms are not criticism per se, but they are political compulsions. We know we are a developing nations, and naturally, since our resources are limited, our foreign policy outreach, our steps, our plans, they will also be limited. But still, we are performing phenomenally well. So, rather than political criticism, go for the statements of the officials. I said you, India being a southwestern power, our Prime Minister at Shangri-La, he had talked about Indo-Pacific, that it is for the benefit of all, for the wellness of the humanity. Then avoid taking extreme or inflexible positions, and that is for every examination, I mean every answer, every paper in the UPSC. Always focus on diplomacy and dialogue. Do not undermine any institution. Suppose a question comes, has SAARC becomes irrelevant? There are no meetings. Nations are going for their own collaboration. India is increasing its focus towards BIMSTEC. Yet again, do not say, talk about the criticism of SAARC. It has got its limitations. But do not say that SAARC needs to be, India needs to abandon SAARC. No. Bring in factors that brings importance to SAARC, like only platform where India along with its regional nations can talk about stability of Afghanistan, only platform where India and Afghanistan come together. They can sit down, they can talk. Or in case of NAM, is NAM significance over? Should India abandon NAM? Yet again, we know that we are on the path to become a superpower, a major economic and military player. Yet again, do not say that NAM has not become irrelevant. Rather, you can say NAM needs to reorient itself. Why? Because of WTO negotiations, because of climate change negotiations, interests of small island nations. So all these factors you have to keep in mind. Every organization is important. Do not say that this organization needs to be abolished. In case of Pakistan, though, even in case of Pakistan, do not abandon this idea of dialogue or diplomacy. They will say that this air strike, has that brought change? Yes, it has brought change. Though there are examples to the contrary, there is no complete restriction on the movement of terror elements, but bring in that it has brought benefits. Is that the solution? No, it is not the solution. Why? Because we have to give importance to dialogue and diplomacy. That can be a one-off, that can be used to call off Pakistan's nuclear bluff, but then it also increases the escalation ladder. The chances of escalation gets increased. Wahab. Yes, that is all from I think sufficient discussions on various parts have already been discussed. So that was my suggestion to you all, and now what are we offering? We are launching a separate IR module, roughly 8 to 10 classes that will start in the evening, so that by the day you read, you study, and different other subject or even the same subject, and we will try to ensure that notes are given beforehand, so that you read, you come prepared to ask your doubts, and so that something new that can be taken up. Okay, so what are we offering? The first would be, in the notes there will be 3 set of information: basic info plus general info plus recent issues and analysis. In basic information, trade, important agreements, etc. In general information, what are the areas of convergence and what are the challenges. This will be part of your notes. And apart from that, and this is the most important part, there will be lots of questions that will be discussed. Because you see, what we are going to do is that when I have given you notes beforehand, the benefit is that you have already read it. So the need for discussion gets limited, because only those specific points where you have got doubts, that can be discussed, or you will say, sir, this topic, this needs a detailed explanation, we will explain. And after that, we have got a lot many questions. What will the questions do? The questions, just a sec. Is there anything that I am? The questions will make you comfortable with IR. Because generally what happens is that we have already taken lessons, we have got notes, we have information. But when a question comes in front of us, because in the beginning only we have seen the question, the type of questions that are being asked, they are not very direct. Only a part of that question is direct. So for direct questions, I have read the notes, I remember them, I can write them down. But what about the indirect part? Because let me tell you a real story. In 2019, there was one question related to Japan. And while coming out of the examination hall, on the stairs we know that all the students converge, and from the back side there was a voice which was saying, the student, the candidate, he was saying कि यार ये जो जापान का क्वेश्चन था इसमें तो पता नहीं चल रहा था कि इंडिया के पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखना है या जापान के पर्सपेक्टिव से. लेट मी सी इफ आई हैव गॉट दैट क्वेश्चन विथ मी. Yeah, this question. The time has come for India and Japan to build a strong contemporary relationship, one involving global and strategic partnership that will have great significance for Asia and the world as a whole. This was the question. Just look at it. The question is about India and Japan. But what is it saying? To build a strong contemporary relationship involving global and strategic partnership that has great significance for Asia and the world as a whole. So the question has got 4 parts in totality. Question is not direct. So even if you have read everything about India and Japan, you will face problem in writing the answer. And that is why when we will be going for lots of questions that will be discussed, that will make you comfortable with IR. While writing the answers, you will think, यार ऐसे आंसर्स तो लिख रखे, ऐसे क्वेश्चन के आंसर तो लिख रखे हैं, इसे भी कर दूंगा. क्योंकि एक फैक्ट है कि नो मैटर अगर मैं यहां 500 क्वेश्चन भी दे दूं, देयर इज हार्डली अ चांस कि सेम क्वेश्चन विल गेट रिपीटेड इन द एग्जामिनेशन. वी हैव सीन इट. So it's all about that confidence building, giving you confidence, making you comfortable. So apart from making you comfortable, what this will do? Content enrichment. Why content enrichment? Because जो भी आपके नोट्स रहेंगे उसमें इंडिया जापान, फिर जापान चाइना, जापान रशिया, जापान यूएसए, अगर इस तरह से नोट्स हम बनाने जाएं तो दिक्कत ये पड़ेगी कि आपके नोट्स हो जाएंगे 100 से 150 पन्ने के. और ऐसे टाइम पर जब आपको बाकी सारे सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ने हैं, हु इज गोइंग टू रीड दिस नोट ऑफ 100 और 150 पेजेस? So to compensate that, when you are answering a set of questions, you are writing their answers, this is helping in content enrichment. And what both of this will do? This will help in developing a habit of answer writing. And yes, the most important thing, सबसे जरूरी बात जो है वो ये है कि सिर्फ प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन या जो क्वेश्चन यहाँ से इंस्टीट्यूट से आपको दिए जा रहे हैं, सिर्फ वही क्वेश्चन नहीं डिस्कस होंगे. अगर आपने कहीं कोई क्वेश्चन देखा है, कहीं कोई दूसरी टेस्ट सीरीज ज्वाइन कर रखी है और उसके क्वेश्चन आपके पास हैं और आप उसके आंसर से सेटिस्फाइड नहीं हैं, या आपको लग रहा है कि इस क्वेश्चन को कैसे हैंडल किया जाए, ब्रिंग दैट क्वेश्चन. अगर वो क्वेश्चन उतना इंपॉर्टेंट, उतना रिलेवेंट रहेगा, हम पूरे क्लास के साथ डिस्कस करेंगे. उतना रिलेवेंट नहीं लगता है, आपको कंफर्टेबल करने के लिए इंडिविजुअली उसे डिस्कस किया जाएगा. सो दी सोल पर्पस वुड बी कि आपके पास बस चीजों की नॉलेज ना रह जाए, चीजों की समझ ना रह जाए, बल्कि आप उस समझ को ट्रांसलेट कर सकें इन योर आंसर्स, एंड यू आर able to write some very good answers in international relations. Even if there are some students of PSI are optional, from this module you will be benefiting, because आपको भी पता है IR के मटेरियल तो अवेलेबल हो जाते हैं, बट रिगार्डिंग टीचर्स एंड देयर अवेलेबिलिटी. लेकिन एक बात और है कि सिर्फ इन आंसर्स से PSIR पेपर 2 पार्ट बी में काम नहीं चलेगा. It needs to be amalgamated with theory of IR. Like suppose in India-China relationship, Here you can write about India and China through those 4 or 5 points that we have discussed. But if you are writing for PSIR optional, bring in the part of theory, ideas of Mearsheimer and his book The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, because that from general to specific expertise, graduate level answer, those theory parts will make it. Like in case of South Asia, bringing in liberal institutionalism. So अगर IR section के लिए भी classes हों, for that if there is sufficient demand, there is sufficient number of students who are willing to study and there is a demand, the institution has said that they will consider it positively. So that is my statement for the PSIR students. But yes, apart from the classes, even if you feel that any specific answer you need to discuss, even if you are not a student of this institution, you can bring in your answer. Make a call to the institution, ask them about my availability as I make myself available. We will discuss that, even the PSIR answers, because I do have some recent experience with PSIR and the answer writing. Okay. So this one is something that everyone will provide you, but this is going to be the USP. Perhaps even more than, what should I say, 100 to 150 or even more questions that will be discussed, and a variety of questions from very easy to difficult ones. In fact, I have got some set of questions with respect to specific topics. Like, just let me read it out for you, the type of questions that we will be discussing in the class. Like suppose for South Asia, the question is, the reasons for challenges being faced by South Asia are both internal and external. Provide a set of suggestions for permanent solution to these challenges. That is one question. Another is, India-Bangladesh relationship and India-Bhutan relationship present a template for cooperation in South Asia. Which one do you think is more suitable for the region? Then another, you see how a global and a local issue, they have been linked. I mean global and regional. The question is, discuss the impact of Ukraine's crisis on India's neighborhood. Economic crisis is just a part of it. There are others. Okay. How can India's position on Ukraine crisis complicate its neighborhood first policy? Ukraine crisis has its roots in the Cold War. Discuss what can be the possible solution to the issue. This was a comparatively simpler one. So such are the type of questions which will be discussed in the class, and the questions that will be discussed, availability of questions, and even you will be encouraged to bring in more questions so that you benefit, whole class benefits. The sole purpose is to make you comfortable with IR, so that when you sit in the examination, you are confident that yes, these 4 questions, question number 9, 10 and 19, 20 of paper 2, I am comfortable and I am going to do that first, so that I can get maximum marks. At least out of 50, I should try to get 30, something like 35. So I don't think, let me see if there is something on the YouTube live, if some student has said anything. Okay. How do I prepare for international relations for GS2 paper? I think that is what that has been discussed throughout the class. and rest others are good morning. So good morning to all of you. I think it's going to be good noon because in 10 minutes it will be 12. So that was all from today's class, and I hope you benefited from it. And in case you benefited from it, give your thanks to Santosh sir. You need to say thanks to him if you have benefited, because when I took the proposal to him that sir, this is what I plan to teach in the first class, he said that this is something I find interesting and this will be beneficial to the students, so you go and do a YouTube live, so that all the students, they get to know at least the basics, and then they can make a more informed decision about joining the module and the benefits that they can be getting. Okay, so you need to thank him. And so this is all for today's class. Tentatively the classes will start from around 30th of this month. I hope to see you all in the class, and let us come together, let us study, let us discuss IR and make ourselves very comfortable in IR, international relations. Even PSIR students, you are also welcome, and if you are in sufficient number, there can be a separate module for you, so that the theory part can also be included, a set of questions that I already have with me for IR, and I shall be framing new questions so that you are made comfortable with your optional paper 2 part 2. So you see, the purpose is very simple. The purpose is that you should be as much comfortable with IR answer writing as much I am. But for that you need to understand things from a diverse perspective, from various point of views. Understanding the nuances of diplomacy, international relations, and how things work. What are the points that needs to be written in the answer booklet, and what are the points that needs to be avoided, because many a times you will read a whole article but you will not find a single point worth noting down in your notes. So leave that burden to me. You will be provided with notes, you will be provided with questions, their answers, and the answers will not be in the form of model answers, but they will be discussed in the class in front of you in a live class, so that in case you have got some additional points or you have got some questions about the points, you can write, you can question, you can clarify, and that will give you even more confidence about approaching that particular segment of the paper. So that's all for today. Hope to see you in the IR class that will be starting tentatively from 30th. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. Dhanyavad.